Welcome to Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go. I'm your host, Tara, and the founder of the blog Travel with TMc, which is where this adventure all began. Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go, is a fun and quirky show that delves into everything travel, whether from the road, in the air, or in between here and there. And in fact, I'm actually recording the intro to this podcast from my Airbnb in Antigua, Guatemala. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen so that you get notifications each week when new episodes drop. And don't forget to leave a 5-star review and comment on who else you'd like to hear in future episodes. This season, we cover all sorts of travel topics, and it's my hope that you'll find one or many that make you think, hey, that's me, I travel that way, or that you'll be inspired to see the world in a new way. This week on Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go, we meet Juanita Metzger, the owner of Stroll Walking Tours. We discuss the magic of community boards, the joy of slow travel, and starting a walking tour company during the pandemic. I don't know about you, but I'm sensing a theme with the cool tour companies I've had on this season. Juanita also shares with us her favorite place on earth, Joshua Tree National Park, and what it was like growing up on a farm. Okay. Thanks for listening, and let's dive in. Hi, Juanita. Thank you for coming. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hi, Tara. I'm so excited to be one of your first guests.
Yes, yeah. For anybody who doesn't know Juanita yet, Juanita Metzger and I met during the pandemic through my mom. Juanita is the owner of Stroll Walking Tours, and she, in the pandemic, had started giving her tours and had let my mom know that she was wanting to test out one of the first ones. And we had the privilege of experiencing the downtown Kitchener street art one. So that's how I know Juanita. She's been an amazing ally as I bumble through entrepreneurship, suggesting business resources and programs to get involved in, and also helping to promote Travel with TMc through her business, which has been really lovely, community building, and nice to have that support in the community. So I'm so happy to have you here. And would you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, where you're calling in from today, and who you are?
Yeah. So, yes, I'm Juanita Metzger, and I'm the owner of Stroll Walking Tours. And this business is 4 years old, or almost 4 years old now. And yes, I started it in 2020 with all my original plans in place in 2019. And of course, the pandemic turned everything upside down. But I almost didn't launch the business, and I decided to anyway once everything was starting to reopen. And so I thought I would open it up for one season because there was not much to do, and all the indoor venues were still closed, and it was something that people could do outdoors in small groups. And so it really was kind of the perfect thing. And Stroll is a little bit of an extension of so many things that I've been doing over the past 20 years. And my background is in community development and social work. And so I've worked primarily with neighborhoods and always on that approach of engaging people in where they live, who they're connected to, and engaging people in being more connected to their neighbors and people who, I guess people where they live. I live in Kitchener, Ontario, and I've lived here since 2000. So at this point, it's 24 years that I've lived in the same spot.
And we're lucky to have you here. I can say as somebody who's been on 6 or 8 of your tours now, you really do a wonderful job of connecting people to their surroundings and the people around them. I have told you many times that walking in my own neighborhood is such a joy now because I know the stories of the places that I pass by because of the stroll tours. So
yeah. I just love helping people to observe differently and notice different things and be curious about places when they're walking. And And sometimes people will say, I've always been curious about this building. And so I went to the library and I looked it up. And, so it sometimes inspires people to go and be curious about things that they've noticed or always wondered about. So that's always
Mhm.
fabulous.
So true. I'm wondering where the travel bug came from for you. Like, were you always a stroller? Were you always one who was into history? And um, did you travel as a child, whether it was locally or abroad? How did that all start?
Yeah, well, I grew up on a farm, and so our family didn't travel at all because there's always work to do on a farm, and it's a lot of work to be away. And so our family just did, very small trips. And it wasn't until I was 15 or 16 that I actually took my first trip, far away. And that was with a group of youth to work at an orphanage in Belize. And so that was the very first time I got on a plane. No, I went to Miami one time before that as well. Um, so yeah, I got on a plane, and Belize was sort of my first introduction to international travel as a 16-year-old, and that kind of got me hooked. And just the learning that you take on when you're faced with something that is very different from your own environment and community, language, food, and yeah, that just got me super curious to travel as much as possible.
That must have been such an incredible experience because I imagine it is quite different there than it is here. And as your first trip, like my goodness, I'm also wondering too because you're quite the writer and you've written for several different publications in Canada and in Ontario. Were you a journaler growing up? Do you have any of those memories like stored for yourself somewhere?
Um, I don't think I have extensive written memories of that time. Um, just old photos, certainly.
Mm.
And some of my subsequent trips, I would do presentations afterwards, and maybe those are lurking in a box in the attic somewhere. I don't know.
Nice.
But I would be very curious about those.
Yeah, something to look back on. How do
Yeah.
you choose now where to travel? Because I know that Joshua Tree is a really special place to you. You just went to New York City for the first time. I feel like you need to share with people how much you walked there and how many tours you did. And yeah, like what grabs your attention now, both as an individual who travels, but as a tour operator who's traveling and probably has that lens on while you're somewhere new too.
Yeah. Um, I would say my inclination has always been towards smaller, out of the way kind of places. Um, Big cities, despite the fact that I have just gone to New York for the first time, big cities have never been, where I'm drawn to. I'm usually drawn to kind of quieter, slower kind of places, um, because I love the whole idea of slow travel. And
Hmm.
it's very calming. And it allows for you to just wander. You don't have to pre plan necessarily. Places that aren't so amped up that you need to pre plan everything in advance. So, yeah, that's kind of why I like places like Joshua Tree, California. It really is, you can just decide from day to day what you feel like doing. Places that have a local community as well are also really important to me, where you can actually go to a place for breakfast and you will be sitting at a table next to people who actually live in the community.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I really love that. And having said that, that has really, really changed in Joshua Tree, California over the number of years that I've been going there to visit, where the explosion of Airbnbs has actually noticeably changed the community. And
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. But that's a place where whenever my husband and I go, we attend monthly book club, because we've
No
met people within the
way.
community. Yeah, yeah, and we'll
Oh, I
go
love
to
that.
art events and art openings, and there's people that we see from year to year and spend time catching up. What's been happening, and we kind of keep up a little bit on Instagram in between.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of cool to go to a place and have people that you connect with. And um, yeah, so that's kind of some of my criteria is its capacity for slow travel, opportunity for to engage and interact with a real community,
Mm.
rather than just a visitor destination. And yeah, things that are a little more off the beaten path, things that take some effort to get to. I love the adventure of getting to a place. And yeah, and it's easy to hop on a plane and land in Paris, and you're in Paris. But I like the adventure of getting somewhere else. And I like the adventure of walking in places too.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like you're an expert walker. You even on your Instagram, you give tips on shoes and how far you've walked for the summer with your tours. And I love the little tidbits like that. But speaking of, how many tours did you say you went on while you were in New York? And were they all walking tours?
yes, they were all walking tours, and I did 6 walking tours.
Oh my goodness. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
everything from Pride, New York City, and so the history of queer and rainbow history in New York City. I visited the Stonewall Inn. Um, Also, a Greenwich Village tour, which was led by somebody who has lived in Greenwich Village for 47 years, or something like that.
Wow.
Um, yeah, brilliant tour. Lower Manhattan, a tenement museum tour, um, a Jewish history tour on Christmas Day, on December 25th. Yeah, so a real interesting variety of walking tours, and every single one of them was fascinating in its own way. And of course, I have a list of 12 more that I would love to do as well.
Somehow this does not surprise me.
You know,
That's awesome. Maybe if there are any if there are any that you think were really fantastic, we can add them in the show notes later. I can get the information and we can add them in the show notes.
definitely.
Yeah. Do you have any travel traditions? Either things that you do in your preparation? I know that you're an avid reader. Like, do you have anything that you either do beforehand or during or after your trips that is common, I guess. I don't know how to phrase that. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Um, Before, yes, I am a reader, and so I usually start reading books that are related to the destination. So it might be authors from New York, or
Mm.
books set in Joshua Tree, or um, books set in England, or English authors that I've always, wondered about. Um, yeah, so I like kind of getting myself mentally prepared with images and voices. Um, yeah, so usually books. And while I'm traveling, I usually look for art, or some kind of yeah, usually art of some capacity, whether it's actually a physical print or a small piece of art or something like that. One time it was spontaneous poetry, by a woman who was doing typewriter poetry at a farmer's
Oh,
market.
cool. Love it. That's
Yes,
awesome.
yeah. Um, Farmers markets are also another one of my traditions, is going to markets anywhere that I travel. I love community bulletin boards. So I will
Aw.
also go and find a local cafe or farmers market or restaurant or something that has a community bulletin board, and scan it for local events that are happening. And that's how one time we ended up at a theater play in Phoenix, Arizona, where my husband and I got made fun of for being Canadians all evening when
Oh,
they found out that we were
oh
visitors. all in
no.
good, all in good fun. It was lovely.
Yeah.
But we were, very warmly welcomed because we were clearly, not local, out of town. But it
Yeah.
was just a very quick way to make a connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, so traditions are, finding something local, and I'm a big fan of bulletin boards. Um, Afterwards, the tradition is to immediately start planning the next destination.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, usually that's either, on the train home or on the plane or driving or whatever it is, but then it's already thinking about what the next destination is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you and your husband take turns with the destinations, or do you decide together, or is there one person who really spearheads where you guys go?
I would say it's a joint decision. Yep. And we each toss out ideas and for whatever reason gravitate towards one idea or another. And yeah, we're pretty sympathetic. Is that a word? Sympathetic, I
Now it
guess.
is.
Or
You're in
um,
sync?
yes, yes, yeah. We're very in sync travelers in terms of our style of traveling and our process of planning travel. We really like to keep things open ended. And so we basically just create a menu of different things that we might like to do. And then it's usually pick and choose what we want to do each day, unless there's something specific that needs to happen on a particular day. We'll actually, sometimes purchase tickets in advance. But yeah, usually it's pretty free flow travel.
Nice. That's awesome. We're going to segue into the next, I guess, section of questions. For those who are new to the podcast or maybe don't know me outside of the podcast, before travel became like the big love of my life, language and words were actually front and center. And I'm wondering, Juanita, do you speak any other languages? And if so, which ones?
Well, yes, I have spoken French for a period of my life, having learned it in public school and high school, and then worked for a national organization called Katimavik, which was a bilingual organization. And so worked in English and French for about 3.5 years. Um, but I also studied Spanish in university and did some private language study over a number of years, and did some language study in Guatemala. And then I
Mm.
worked in Guatemala for a period of time in Spanish.
I don't
And
think I knew this. Hash that out a little bit. I want to know. No way.
yeah, yep. I worked for a nonprofit organization that was like an umbrella organization for nonprofits and NGOs in Guatemala. And so I worked with them doing a whole bunch of baseline data collection for a new project that they had coming up. So I traveled all over the country working in Spanish and felt like a kindergartner. Just in terms of, being able to speak and communicate and feeling like I'm really an intelligent person, but
Yes.
my language feels like the level of a grade schooler. But then people reminded me that so many people in the rural areas of Guatemala, Spanish is also their second or third language,
Right.
because many Maya speak indigenous languages. And so my not having perfect Spanish was just fine.
Yeah. That's so neat.
Yeah.
Have you, with how multicultural Waterloo region is, like us being the fourth biggest settlement area for newcomers to Canada, have you been able to use your French or your Spanish in Waterloo region, either on your tours or just through the work that you've done here as well?
Yeah, Spanish much more so, definitely. And that's always been fun, to meet people in the community and be able to have an initial conversation with them in Spanish. Um, and I love the fact that I can hear Spanish in the grocery store or on the street. And, it's nice to just kind of follow the same route as somebody following Spanish, just so that you can hear it being spoken and not eavesdropping, of course, on personal conversations, but, just casual conversations that happen in the community. I miss hearing that. There's always other
Yeah.
languages, but hearing another language that you can actually understand is really lovely.
Definitely. I like to say that I'm practicing my listening skills when I hear somebody speaking another language that I know.
Yes. And I grew up in a home where there was also a second language spoken. My parents spoke Pennsylvania German, which is the German dialect that many local Mennonites speak here in Waterloo region. And our parents never taught us the language, but they just used it between themselves to talk about things that they didn't want us to understand as kids.
I love it. I'm assuming you would have picked up on some of that, though. Those listening skills would have started early on.
Yeah, it's a bizarre language, and I don't think it's just not very obvious at all. Uh,
So
yeah, it's not
interesting.
something that you really pick up, and yeah, and they
Yeah,
didn't speak it with us, as young children. They didn't speak
right.
directly to us. Um, yeah, so
Cool.
we didn't feel any sort of draw towards it. It was always very odd to us. It's a very odd sounding dialect. And so, yeah, we had no inclination to learn it whatsoever.
Yeah, I love hearing these stories. I'm curious to know too, do you have in any of the languages that you know, do you have any favorite words or phrases, or maybe even something that's just so bizarre that it's stuck with you? Maybe it makes you smile or kind of go, what is that?
Mm, off the top of my head, not a ton, but I always like learning casual phrases that are, not swear words, but just sort of slang.
Yeah.
In Guatemala, people would often say "que onda," which is what's happening, how are you doing, just kind of a casual greeting, and that's very different than the formal greeting. Yeah, so I
Right.
like learning those kinds of things.
Nice. Digging into being a local using the language. Love
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Another topic I'm really curious to dig into is people's experience with travel and technology, as well as their opinions on it, I suppose, because you and I have both traveled when the internet wasn't really around and guidebooks would have been like the go-to, or paper maps or whatnot. And also, as a business owner in travel, I'm curious to know, both from the perspective of a traveler and a travel business owner, how has technology changed the way that you experience the industry?
Yeah. A couple things. Yeah, I traveled for a long time without any technology, no cell phone, no nothing. When I went to work in Guatemala, a friend of mine gave me an electronic Spanish English dictionary. And
I
that was
remember
like,
those.
yeah, yes. And that was so wild to think that I just had this, little, the size of a calculator, this pocket
Yeah.
electronic dictionary that I could use, and I didn't have to carry this big paper dictionary with me. um, but I have also intentionally done travels without a cell phone and without taking any technology with me. And it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And relied on paper maps while driving. And partly because I am really afraid of losing those skills of,
Oh, yeah.
natural wayfinding, talking to people to be able to find directions or find a place. that reliance on technology, because we tend to go to out of the way places. Out in Joshua Tree National Park, there is no signal. Like, there's a satellite signal, but I'm not carrying satellite with me, a satellite
Right.
phone or anything like that. There are no signals. And so you can't rely on it. And so I've actually, my husband and I have taken uh, orienteering and wayfinding, and map orienteering, in Joshua Tree, just as a way of learning that skill and knowing that we go there regularly, and so it's a skill that we'll use regularly.
It's so
Um,
interesting that you mentioned the skill side of this because, like, when I was a kid, my dad would make us get, if we wanted to go to a friend's house, he would make us get out the road map and give him directions to how to get. And I would be in tears because A, I would be lazy, but B, I was awful with using a map. I needed to turn it the way that the direction we were going in. And I have found myself with Google Maps less connected to wherever I've been. People have asked me what highway I took or which route I went, and I couldn't tell you because I've just blindly followed go left here, take this exit instead. It really is a skill to know how to do these things.
Yep. Yeah. And whenever my husband and I would do driving trips, I'm usually the navigator, and I find us a back roads, off the beaten path kind of direction. And that's the best place to find unexpected things. And so, yeah, I think that's important. That skill is important.
Very much.
And in terms of how it's influenced, um, me being a tourism operator, I've been a little bit resistant on some things. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're walking tours. You should like put them on an app and use QR codes." And I've really resisted that because, again, it creates that distance between you and the stories and the places and the people. And the joy of a walking tour, I think, is connecting with other people, learning from someone else who has
Mhm.
brought together all this knowledge in a really unique kind of way, and created a narrative. um, Something different happens in our brains and physically, and physiologically, when we have this experience together on a walking tour, that people have their brains kind of light up with that, "Wow, I never knew this. This is blowing my mind." Or, "I met three people who are, part of my community, and we'll probably see each other next week at the market because we all go there." And so that it's this connection space that just doesn't happen in the same way with technology. So in that way, I'm a little bit old school in, relying on showing, printed photos on our walking tours. And, certainly I use an online reservation system so that people can book and pay. That's just, that's a standard for the industry, for people to be able to do that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's about the connection, and having that happen in a different way that's more analog, rather than digital, because, like, we're 80% digital now on everything, and more people are gravitating to more of those kind of analog experiences. So that's my
Yeah.
jam, and I
It's
like being able to provide that for people.
I love that you do that. Honestly, I think one of the most special parts of travel is the connection with other humans, whether it's asking for directions instead of using Google Maps, or asking the barista where their favorite restaurant is to go to, or meeting somebody on a walking tour, or meeting the guide like in Dublin. You know how I met Kevin, and for anybody who's listened to the episode that Kevin and I recorded, he is a tour owner and tour guide in Dublin, and he used to live in Kitchener. And if I had done an audio guide on my phone, we would have never made that connection. And subsequently, I've been able to connect him with you, Juanita. And we like it's that's what makes the world go around, is all of these
Mhm.
personal human element. So I'm with you on this. Long live the resistance against some tech.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I just don't want to be beholden to it all the time. Once the walking tour starts, or even, 15, 20 minutes before, I don't have time to check for late, last minute people. And my full attention is on the group and the people who are there. And yeah, so it's something that I don't like to rely on, and be absolutely responsive to all the time.
Yeah.
There's a time to just get analog.
Yep. I hear you. Love the tangible. How do you document your travels at all? Just for you, not for the rest of the world? I think your husband does drawings when you guys are away, but do you do anything like that, or do you write, or is it your photographs?
Yeah, a couple things. Photos, definitely, and some of them I'll share online. Um, and I like doing story documentations on Instagram of travels. I usually also document through little objects. So it might be stone from a hike, a photo of a particular object or something unique that we found on a hike. Yeah, my husband sketches and draws. So, if we end up hiking 3,000 feet, to the top of a summit or something, we'll sit at the summit for an hour while he draws. um, or, sometimes I will find a fabric or something that represents a travel, and I'll sew it maybe into a garment that I would wear for myself, or a bag or something like that. So yeah, and often through art, or small objects. And yeah, sometimes I do write as well, as I've written a number of travel articles based on travels. Yeah, I think that's the majority of
That's
it.
really cool. Yeah, such
Yeah,
a
I do
variety. I
also.
love it.
Yeah, for a number of years, I did travel diaries, where I
Mhm.
would document in more detail, but I haven't done that in like maybe more than a decade.
Yeah.
But we do always keep our menu of things that we plan to do, and then we usually end up making a little, calendar schedule of what we actually do each day. So we do actually have a
A
documented list
record.
of things that we did. And yeah,
Yeah, very cool. That's so neat. I love hearing about how people preserve those memories for themselves because there's so many different ways that you can do it, and that changes for people through the course of their life as well. Um, Moving forward a little bit, I know that in North America, there's often this conversation about the impacts that we receive on a personal level from travel. You know, travel has changed my life, or travel has given me this, or whatnot. And I'm curious to know a bit about how travel has impacted your life, and what are some of those benefits that you've received. And then once we talk about that a bit, I'd love to flip the script as well, and I have a few other questions to toss your way.
sure. I think the biggest impact has really been just the desire to learn from people and learn about other people's experiences around the world. I think it makes us more empathetic people,
Mm,
when we travel in an authentic way and learn about other people's lives. Um, I think it makes us more tuned in to what's happening in other parts of the world, where people's experiences are very different from our own. And myself being a privileged middle-aged white woman, I carry a lot of privilege, and I think it's important for me to keep learning about other people's experiences. And I think that also has helped me to move to action in different ways. And it's also impacted a lot of decisions about the way I live and the way I travel. in trying to be as light as possible on the earth, and having as minimal an impact as possible when I travel. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Has there been anything or anywhere that has really surprised you in your movement around the world, whether it's a place that you maybe had some ideas about beforehand or that you had no idea about beforehand and it kind of just blew you away, or something about yourself as well?
Um, yeah. Two destinations that have become, I guess, stuck in my mind. Joshua Tree, California. Obviously, I've mentioned that a couple times, and that has really been about developing a sense of community there, which keeps us going back. And it's a landscape that I've discovered really actually lets you disengage from the world around you, and you're just immersed in the landscape. And for me, there, it's about the sky. It's the fact that you can see a full horizon that's unobstructed by buildings and forests. And so you can see the sky for, you know, forever. You can see so much sky that you can see the sun rising in the morning in the east and the moon going down in the west at the same time.
Oh,
Like the
wow.
sky is that big. Yeah. And also in Southwest US, Phoenix, Arizona really surprised me. Um, my husband and I went there because it was a quick direct flight from Toronto. Um, we had like 5 days away, and so we wanted something warm, and something that we could get to with a fairly short direct flight. And we went to Phoenix, having minimal expectations about it because it's a large, sprawling city, but we discovered that it was full of art, outdoor
Oh.
art, amazing galleries and museums, and came across this empty lot. And there was a group of people sitting in the middle of the lot, two chairs with a table and a flower vase in it, and somebody filming them. And so we just stopped to watch. And when they were finished, we said, "What's happening here?" And they said, "Well, we're starting a Phoenix placemaking initiative." Oh my gosh! So, I mean, those were our people, to just,
Yeah.
be tuned in to what's happening over there, and, connecting those people. And so, yeah, it ended up, hour-long conversation about this initiative that they were starting. Yeah. And Portugal, I would jump at the chance to go back to Portugal after
Okay.
having done an 8-day walking tour. No big surprise.
8-day walking tour? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yes. And it was town to town. And so, you've got from morning till night to get yourself to your evening accommodations. Um, and you've got your own maps. It's self directed, self timed, and it went through these coastal areas and through some forested areas and into the town of Sintra, with these fantastical castles and buildings, and
Right.
yeah, and it was just absolutely delightful. And the food, all the fish and seafood, and oh my gosh. Yeah,
I
so
have a
that
feeling
was,
it won't be long before you're back based on how you're talking about it.
yeah. And that was a trip without any technology. We just had
Beautiful.
our guidebook, a map book that we were given for the trip, and followed all of our routes and tours for the day. And you could choose to take a shorter route or longer route. And yeah,
Very
it's
cool.
delightful. Absolutely lovely way to see 75 kilometers of Portugal.
Amazing. I love this. Do you remember the name of, like, would you consider it like an organized tour, or is it more
Yeah,
like a Camino sort of idea,
it was
or?
through a UK company called ATG Oxford. And you can do guided tours where you're together with a group of people, or you could do, these footloose options where it's just you and whoever else you're traveling with. All the accommodations are booked for you. They take your luggage in the morning and drive it to your evening accommodations. And so then all you do is you just carry what you need for the day. So it's a great way to be able to do a walking slow travel, but still have the convenience of not having to backpack all of your extra gear.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Very
Love
cool. Yeah. So on the flip side of the benefits that individuals receive from travel, I don't know about you, but as I've gotten older, I also consider more about the impact that I leave on places, both when I'm there and after I've gone. And I think we're seeing more people consider this too, which is fantastic, especially as Anglophones, because I mean, that's a whole other tangent, but I think about the impact we leave as privileged individuals who can speak our language nearly anywhere in the world, and how that can impact people in the places we go. But I feel like you're a pretty considerate person, Juanita. Like, do you consciously go through um, what you want to leave behind, or what impression you want to leave with the people that you interact with, whether it's with regards to like sustainability or interpersonal interactions, or how do you think about your impact on these places that you visit?
Yeah, I do think about that. I think it's part of wanting to be respectful so that, I guess, so that I'm not a demanding person. People aren't, after I leave a destination or a place, people aren't going to say, "Oh my gosh, thank gosh they're gone."
Right.
Glad to be rid of them. That stereotype of the worst traveler ever. I never
Right.
ever want to be that, where people feel like they've been put upon by me as a traveler or visitor. Um, and yeah, I guess I want to leave the impression that there are good travelers who are respectful, and be that kind of example of more the kind of traveler I would like to see more of as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I feel like you also, um, as you've talked about throughout our chat today, like you're really focused on local. You're not going to like big resorts where perhaps the money isn't going back into the community. Like you are going to the local cafes, and you're joining local book clubs, and
Yeah.
you're digging in, and in that way, it is partly giving back as well, and finding those local places that you can contribute to or partake in as somebody who's not there all the time. Do you have any tips for people maybe who haven't traveled before, or who are dipping their toes into it, on how to respect local cultures and traditions when traveling abroad? Because you've both lived abroad and traveled. Um, yeah, what's maybe one or two tips that you would give somebody else who's in a new place and they are the foreigner?
I would say go to one place and stay there for 2 weeks. Rather than just going for 2 days or, a day and a half or whatever. The jet in, jet out will never lead to deeper understanding, to connecting with community. Um, Go somewhere and stay in one place. Um, it's easier on the environment because you're not, jetting around to multiple destinations all in one trip. But go to somewhere, stay there for 2 weeks or a week or 10 days, and use that as your home base, as a place to explore around you and within the community where you're visiting. Um, that would be my number one
Your
tip.
tip. Okay, that's a good one. I love that one. Is there a type of travel that you haven't tried yet? And if so, why haven't you traveled in that way? And when do you think you might do it, if it's something that you'd like to give a try?
I have never been on a cruise, and I doubt I ever will. um, And I might consider like a river cruise.
Mm.
Um, I'm curious about container ship travel,
Oh,
because it's a ship that's already going in that direction.
right.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of, I'm curious about that, but yeah, I'll probably never be on a cruise ship. I would love to do a sleeper car train travel,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
a 40-hour trip or a 6-day trip or something like that with a sleeper car. I would love to do that.
Yeah, like the Via Rail one that goes across Canada, or the one that goes across, is it Russia? There's some really cool train trips out there.
Yeah, like the Trans-Siberian, something like
Yes,
that.
exactly. Yeah,
That one's
yeah.
probably not going to happen anytime soon.
No, I know.
Sleeper car travel, I would love to do.
And for not having done a cruise and not being interested in it, is that a sustainability thing? Because when you mentioned container ship, you talked about how it's already going somewhere, or why the no cruises?
Yeah, just because they're an environmental menace. Their impact on oceans, their fuel consumption, the food waste, the lack of impact on local communities. What the stat from Bruce Poon Tip is that for every $100, people, like for large corporate travel and all inclusive vacations, for every $100 that people spend on travel, only $7 or less ends up with local communities. Um,
Whoa.
yeah, and I feel like uh, I can do better than that.
Yeah, not your jam. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Alrighty.
yeah, the entertainment travel is, yeah, that's just not my thing either. So,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
yeah, too many people.
We've Yeah.
I could go on.
All right.
I
We've
feel
talked a little
I
bit.
feel some things about it.
Yeah, it's okay. We've all got feels about something.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about living abroad, and we've talked a little bit about traveling. And I'm curious about something that you consciously or subconsciously do when you're traveling that you don't do well at home. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh, do or don't do. Okay, when I've traveled, a couple times I've eaten meat, even though I'm a vegetarian.
Okay, so you're a flexitarian on the road.
And that's largely just been cultural,
Yeah.
because when you're in a small community, 8 hours, in a hill area in Guatemala, and somebody offers you a bowl of chicken soup, you eat it
Right, right.
because you're a
And that
guest
comes
in the
back to the
community.
respecting local cultures again as well.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
in Norway, traveling, we were on a kayak trip, and the guide prepared a fresh meal of fresh salmon and reindeer sausage, and so I tried reindeer sausage. You know,
Yeah.
so
What did you
I
think?
think,
I just had some for the first time in December.
yeah, it kind of reminded me of sausage that I ate as a kid. Um, yeah, I didn't have any, I don't have a lot of experience with, being a meat connoisseur.
Right, right.
So yeah, it was fine. I ate more of the salmon because I do eat fish, and
Cool.
but yeah, having a small piece of reindeer sausage was fine.
Very cool. What is the weirdest place that you've ever slept?
Um, in Guatemala,
Yeah.
we were late. Our date, things just kind of evolve on your day, and buses don't show up, and blah blah blah. And so we ended up sleeping overnight in a community, and there was no electricity anywhere. I thought I was going to be sleeping on a pile of bags of rice. until some people in the community brought a bed frame from someone's
Oh,
house. No mattress on it, just ropes across the bed frame. And I piled like a bunch of rice bags on the rope frame as my bed that night
oh
in
wow.
a rice and coffee storage building. And that's where myself and my colleagues slept that night.
What a cool story. That paints such a picture.
Yes. Yeah.
um, do you feel more at home in any of the places that you've traveled or lived compared to like growing up on the farm, or is that truly like what home would feel like, I guess, in some ways?
Definitely after 10 plus years of traveling to Joshua Tree, feel very much at home there, even
Yeah.
though the landscape is so dramatically different than Southern Ontario. It's kind of lunar in a desert landscape, um,
Yeah.
but feel very much at home, partly because of the community connections that we've built over
Mm.
time and a lot of similarities with, there being very much an arts scene there, um, and an active farmers market and a little bit of a hippie community that feels very comfortable.
I love that. Neat. Changing tracks a little bit, I know that you're starting to dip your toes into traveling with points and miles. I recently held a workshop in Waterloo region that you attended, and I'm curious to know, had you traveled much with points and miles in the past? What is your curiosity with it now? What are you hoping to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah, my husband and I have used points and miles in the past and have collected them for probably 20 years or so. And we have used them a couple times for trips, where we've accumulated enough. I think we've done like a trip to England and another one to, I think, a couple flights to Palm Springs that we've used redeemed miles for them. Yeah, so continue to collect and redeem as we kind of move towards retirement years. The opportunity to use points will increase. So
Mm.
definitely want to, build up miles to be able to use for travel in the next decade.
Very cool. What are two or one or two items that you always travel with? Something that you might suggest to someone else or that are just invaluable to you when you're out and about in the world.
A book, always. um, and again, it's kind of it's a connection thing. Some people will lean over across the aisle and say, "I just finished that book, earlier this year," or "I've been wanting to read that book," or and it's a way. Usually, I leave a book somewhere. I find somewhere that you can trade, a book and pick up a different one, and
Yeah.
yeah, so always a book and snacks.
Any
Snacks.
favorites?
I like hummus and vegetables for snacks. That's always good.
Nice.
Pretzels. Go to kind of travel sort of mini meal is tortilla wrap with peanut butter, sliced apple, cheddar cheese, and maybe some um, creamed honey or something in it.
Nice.
And yeah, so something for a bit of crunch and protein. Um, yeah, those are two things. I'll probably think of a bunch of others later. But and
Fantastic.
foot, because we're often walking a lot, so like foot repair kit,
Oh, okay.
super important.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's a good point. And do you have like, is there a book right now that you would recommend to people by chance?
um, Somebody in preparation for our trip to New York City, somebody introduced me to the writer Fiona Davis, and she writes all of these historically based novels set in New York City. And so one is set
Oh,
in Grand Central Terminal. Another centers around the New York Public Library. So they're just really lovely stories, fabulous characters. So any of her books set in New York City. And then nonfiction. No, it is a fiction book, but based on a true story, is called The Personal Librarian. And it's a woman who was a Black woman passing as white, and she became the personal librarian to J.P. Morgan in the early 1900s.
Oh, wow.
And became one of the most significant art and manuscript buyers in the modern world at that time in the early 1900s. So the two authors collaborated on the book and wrote it as fiction, but based on her personal papers and J.P. Morgan personal histories. And it was a fantastic book, The Personal Librarian.
Amazing. Okay, thanks for those recommendations. That's great. And actually, speaking of recommendations, so as a bonus for the podcast listeners, with my guest's help, I'm curating a travel playlist so that they can listen to it when they're on their trips. Do you have one song that either sums up your travel style or reminds you of one of your trips?
Yes, and it's very obscure.
Okay.
It's an individual musician. He goes by the name of Red, Blue, Black, Silver.
Okay.
And his first name is Robert. He is an ambient music producer. And so all of his music is, and of course he's from Joshua Tree, lives in Joshua Tree,
Okay.
California.
Okay.
And all of his music is what he calls soundscapes. And so there's soundscapes related to the landscape in and around the Mojave Desert in Southern California. And he does a lot of music for a podcast called Desert Oracle, which is a podcast that I love. A very spooky, weird, kind of bizarre podcast. But super fabulous to listen to on a dark Friday night in the middle of the desert. And I've actually seen him perform live at the 29 Palms Inn in 29 Palms, recorded a live concert while we had dinner there one evening. And I've met him as well while we were in town one afternoon. So yeah, Red, Blue,
Very
Black, Silver.
cool. Okay, you can send me the name of a song and I'll add it in.
I'll find one. Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, we're gonna end on a speed round. So either you can do it.
Okay.
Just as it sounds, one word or one sentence, however you can respond in a moment. So, where is your next trip?
Burnstown, Ontario. Going to see the Sadies perform at the Neat Cafe.
Oh, very cool. Mini trips are the best. I feel like I know the answer to the next one, but what is your favorite mode of transportation?
Walking.
Very on brand.
Yes.
Do you prefer planned trips or spontaneous trips?
Yeah, spontaneous.
Mm-hmm. Are you an underpacker or an overpacker?
Under.
What's the most overrated destination that you've been to?
I don't think I've been to many of them.
Okay. All right. What about the most underrated?
Oh gosh, underrated. Maybe Montreal. Like it's definitely not overrated, but like in terms of being an international destination, I think it is like head shoulders above other international destinations. And it's just so casual about it. It's like, yeah, we're Montreal. We're fantastic. Like,
love it.
Of course you love us. Yeah.
Very Quebecois.
Yeah.
What home comfort do you miss the most when you're away?
Usually making homemade popcorn.
Very cool. I was not
Yes.
expecting that answer. All right.
Yeah, because I love homemade popcorn, and yeah, store-bought is just not the same as a
Agreed.
fresh bowl of hot popcorn.
Yeah. What's the best piece of travel advice you've received either directly or that you've seen somewhere?
Leave no trace. It's
Mm-hmm.
important in the hiking, walking community, and I think it expands beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Are you a window seat or an aisle seat person?
Window.
Yeah.
Yep.
um, Describe yourself as a traveler in 3 words.
Um, Slow travel, curious travel, traveler, um, and mindful.
Lovely. What are 3 characteristics, since you do travel with a partner, that make for a good travel partner?
Flexible, um, uh, good communication, and up for anything.
Cool. Yeah. Yes
Yeah,
person.
adventurous. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What's the best gift for a traveler? And this could be something tangible or intangible. Yeah. What would you say is the best gift?
I would say art, buying some piece of art from a local artist.
Nice. And I'm curious to know what you think the best travel app is.
Um, I don't use any.
That's
So
okay.
I don't really know.
No
Yeah.
problemo. That ends
Yeah.
our speed round.
Phew, I passed.
You did great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Juanita. It's been awesome to have you and to learn more about you. We've talked so many times, and yet there are still more layers to peel back and learn about. So, where can people find you? And is there anything else that you'd like to add?
People can find me on Instagram personally at Juanita Metzger or at Stroll Walking Tours for walking tours in Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, and St. Jacobs. Um, and of course, if you see my little profile on Instagram and then see me in real life somewhere around town, please say hello. That happens all the time. Yeah, people walk up to me and say, "Hey, are you the Stroll Walking Tours person? I follow you on Instagram." So I love that. Please say hello. I think that's about it.
Very cool. And for anybody who is in the region or who's visiting the region, I know that Juanita has added some new food and thrifting tours for the 2024 season. So definitely check those out as well. I know that I will be. And I guess that's it. I hope you have a wonderful long weekend. And I can't wait to connect in person again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the conversation, Tara. It's been super fun.
Thanks, Juanita. Take care. Bye.
Take care.